Google might have actually finally done it with the Pixel 10 series and other devices launched today. Honestly, I'm really quite excited to get a review unit in hand and actually go through it in more detail, more thoroughly, because what we have here could be the platform or foundation for one of the best phones of 2025. Hey guys, I'm Ryan Thomas, and Google has just unveiled the Pixel 10, the 10 Pro, the 10 Pro XL, Pixel Buds Pro 2 and the Pixel Watch 4. All highly anticipated, but also devices that kind of feel like they've been around for a while. A little bit to do with the fact that Google kind of just teases its own phones, and also the leaks before that. It all looks like much of a muchness on the surface, but there are some interesting tweaks, some changes, upgrades under the hood, making these things actually pretty exciting. Okay, first up, the Pixel 10 series kind of looks the same as last year, and in my opinion that's only really a good thing. It's one of my favourite phone designs of the last 5 years. Big fan of that camera visor and the colours. It's very iconic looking, it's very distinctive. So unless you really know what you're looking for, it's going to be hard to really tell the difference between the 9 series and the 10 series when out and about. Although there are particular colour changes and shades that if you do know what you're looking for, you will be able to find. There have been a few internal upgrades series-wide. So for example, the displays are the same size, the same resolution as last year, but now rated for slightly higher peak brightness, a couple of hundred nits here or there. So 3000 on the 10 and then 3300 nits on the Pro and the Pro XL, which might help a little bit in HDR, but this isn't something that I'm expecting to be able to notice straight out of the box, even really side by side, unless you're really looking for those fine differences. The screens were so good last year though that I'm not concerned that we haven't seen a big jump or a leap in technology this year. These are likely to be some of the best displays that you will get in a smartphone if the Pixel 9 series was anything to go by. All models, whilst basically identical in terms of dimensions, save for 0.1 mil of thickness, have grown in weight, sort of 6 to 11 grams depending on which of the models you're looking at, which could be down to these slightly beefier batteries inside them. Now, these aren't massive upgrades, they're not silicon carbon from what I can work out. It's around a 150 to 200 mAh increase across the board. But curiously, whilst the Pixel 10 and the 10 Pro are basically the same size in terms of dimensions, the lesser Pixel 10 has an extra 100 mAh compared to the Pro model. Is that to make space for other hardware like cameras? I don't know right now, but it is pretty interesting to see the cheaper phone have a bigger battery, similar to what we had with the Pixel 9a this year. Fast charging has also been upgraded by 3 to 7 watts, again depending on which model you look at. So okay, not a crazy big jump here, but it's meant to essentially give you the same amount of battery percentage charge in half an hour. Unlikely this is to help it charge these slightly larger batteries in the same amount of time. So that makes total sense to me. It isn't groundbreaking, and honestly I'm not sure anyone who's expecting Google to put rapid charging in their phones this year, but the fact that we're around 30 watts in 2025, it's still a little bit worrying to me. Of course we have to talk about the cameras, that's why I'm here. Okay, only joking. But there have been some seriously noticeable changes to the setups this year that might sway your purchasing decision, and I don't say that in a clickbaity way. So on the Pro models, there's fewer changes here. We have a new on-device AI zoom enhancement called ProRes Zoom. It's an awful name because it has ProRes in it, you know, the legendary video format. But no, this is a zoom enhancer, ProRes Zoom. Yeah, for God's sake. Anyway, the idea is this should resolve quality on device up to 100 times, which is kind of crazy. And it's strictly for the Pro models because it shouldn't be confused with Super Res Zoom, which I'm sure many of you have already heard of by now. That is in the base model and actually is where things get a little bit more interesting. So much like this year's Pixel 9a versus the 8a that came before it, Google has downgraded the cameras in here. That's right, you don't get a 50 megapixel 1/1.3 inch sensor anymore. Last year, basically the Pixel 9 had the same main sensor as the 9 Pro. This time it's a 1/2 inch sensor, and based on the surface level specs that Google has given us, I believe it to be the same one from the 9a. In fact, that kind of annoys me a bit because it is a significant downgrade. I'm not a fan of that. In fact, to make matters worse, you also get the ultra-wide downgrade into the Pixel 9a. It's a 13 megapixel 1/3.1 inch setup, Another downgrade from the 9, which of course had the much more powerful 48 megapixel 1/2.55 inch setup. Both of these compromises are likely to make way for the now 5 times optical telephoto camera in here. So yes, the base model Pixel 10 does actually get a long lens. It's a 10.8 megapixel 1/3.1 inch sensor, so it's a bit smaller in size and significantly lower in resolution than what you would find in the Pro this year, which is the same as last year. And this interests me because I do think that people will notice and enjoy the big zoom that they have in their phone, but I wonder if Google has done enough with its computational photography to really iron out the major hardware compromises it's had to make in the 1x and the ultra-wide. Because Google now claims this year it has an upgraded ISP or image signal processor to go along with faster CPU performance and a better TPU in the Tensor G5. Now, we have no figures, no way of really evaluating that right now, so be sure to stay tuned for the review where we will objectively put these things through their paces. And Google claims that the Pixel 10 series uses zoned UFS for its storage, which should in theory help it stay quicker for longer without degrading the flash in there. But right now, it could still be UFS 3.1, which is concerning to me because, well, that's what we had on the Pixel 6 and the 6a. UFS 3.1 is half of the bandwidth of UFS 4, which has been around in many an Android smartphone for a long time now. In fact, some have already moved on to UFS 4.1. So I pray that Google has upgraded its storage standard in here, but given it hasn't been up front with the revision number, I'm not holding out much hope, and that is concerning. If Google has significantly upgraded its CPU and GPU performance to go along with the claimed better AI and image processing, then this could be a phone that for many of us we have been asking for years at this point. Like, this could be the Pixel that finally hangs with the best of the best in regards to performance and battery life in particular, and if that's the case, Google is kind of cooked here. But that isn't all. The Pixel Watch 4 is also here, and like last year, it has maintained the strap compatibility with older models. Love to see stuff like this carrying on going. Its screen is now rated at 50% higher peak brightness, 3000 nits, which is fantastic news because it's always great to have a brighter watch display, especially in the harsh lighting conditions that some of us find ourselves in. The LTPO panel is 1 to 60 Hz variable refresh rate. The battery has grown ever so slightly, and there is now a Snapdragon W5 Gen 2 inside powering this beast, which should mean great performance since the Gen 1 in the OnePlus Watch 3 was already doing a phenomenal job. Given how impressed I was with the Pixel Watch 3 last year, I'm going into the Watch 4 review with pretty high expectations thanks to last year's phenomenal fitness tracking, health metrics, battery life and display. This year could become my new default recommendation, but we will have to see. Let's not jump the gun there. There's a lot hanging on Google's improvement of Tensor this year. If it truly is that bump up in performance and crucially efficiency that we've been asking for, then this new model could be a triumph, because that's basically the biggest ask we've had with the Pixel 9 series. Bridging that gap could make the world of difference. However, the compromises made with the Pixel 10's camera setup are twofold, because on the one hand, you are getting literally worse hardware than the Pixel 9 series in terms of the main and the ultra-wide. You're getting an A series level camera. This is a Pixel 9a main and ultra-wide in here for much more money. But will that be enough for the mainstream, who this phone is absolutely targeted at, to really care or even notice the difference? Or will they be happy now that their phone has a nice long zoom lens and just gloss over or not even pay attention to the fact that it has deficits in other areas? I think Google is leaning on that latter happening, and it'll be an interesting one to watch for sure. Guys, are you kind of getting concerned in the enpoopification of some of these hardware downgrades? Or do you believe that they are worthy compromises to be able to get other features like the zoom in the Pixel 10 base model and not have that feature reserved for the Pro? Let me know what you think in the comments. This could be a bit of a divisive one. Of course, whilst you're down there, be sure to subscribe to not miss our review coverage coming up of these devices and also comparisons with other favourite devices out there. Thank you all so much for watching. I've been Ryan Thomas, and I will catch you later. Cheers.